The sun rose slowly over the sugarcane fields, as if the sky itself needed courage to illuminate that place. The Boa Esperanza farm was large. Very large. So large that anyone looking from the top of a hill would see only green, yellow, and red dust spreading across the horizon. It was a farm that brought pride to those who owned it and pain to those who served it. Seu Augusto Ferreira was 52 years old, with broad shoulders, calloused hands, and a gaze that carried more weariness than joy. He had been a widower for 7 years. He had lost his wife to a fever that not even the best doctor in the region could explain. Since then, he had managed the farm alone, slept alone, and woke up alone, to the only sound of the rooster that didn't know its owner had already been awake for hours. People in the region respected him. Other farmers greeted him with a firm handshake. The local priest called him a man of good character. But Augusto knew, deep down, that he was just an empty man with a lot of land and very little life. Dozens of people worked on the farm. There was old Candido, who took care of the oxen and spoke more to the animals than to people. There was Toninho, a boy who ran away from tasks whenever he could and was scolded several times a day. There was Donna Lourdes, a fat and cheerful cook who sang while kneading bread and said that food needed music to have flavor. And there was Amelia. Amelia was 26 years old. She was a slave, a word that hurt anyone who heard it with an open heart. Daughter of a mother who had also served that land. Granddaughter of a grandmother who had arrived in chains from far away. She grew up learning that the world had one place for her. The back, the bottom, the place of silence. But Amelia was more than the place the world tried to give her. She had a way of walking that seemed like music, not the kind that draws attention, but the kind that makes the wind stop to watch. She had a low but firm voice that, when she spoke, made the children stop running to listen. She had deep, dark eyes, where lived an intelligence that society tried to erase every day, and that survived every day. She took care of the big house, sweeping, cleaning, organizing, always with her eyes on the ground. But for survival, she had learned that looking the wrong person in the eyes could cost dearly. It was on a Tuesday afternoon that everything began. Augusto arrived from town earlier than expected. He came from a meeting with other farmers that had left his stomach turned. They had talked about the harvest, money, and status. No one had asked how he was. No one had asked anything that mattered. He got off his horse, tossed the reins to Candido, and entered the big house with heavy steps. In the hallway, Amelia was cleaning a window. The afternoon light hit obliquely, golden, and she was humming softly. So softly that she herself barely heard it. It was a nameless melody, the kind her grandmother had taught without lyrics, only with the mouth and the heart. Augusto stopped. He didn't know why. His feet simply stopped. He stood looking for a second. Not with the look of an owner looking at property, but with the look of a man looking at something he didn't know he had been searching for. Amelia felt his presence, stopped humming, lowered her gaze even more, and took a step back. "You may continue," Augusto said, in a voice that came out, softer than he intended. She remained silent. It was not customary for the master to ask her to continue. "I said you may continue," he repeated, this time with a tone of genuine request that surprised even him, and he went to his office, closed the door, sat in the leather chair, and stayed there listening to the silence. She didn't sing anymore that day, but the melody stayed inside him. The weeks that followed were strange for Augusto. He began to notice things. The way Amelia folded the towels with an almost artistic care. How she comforted the farm's children when one of them got hurt. A quick embrace, a short but precise word. How she taught the other women to read, in secret, using twigs on the dirt floor of the slave quarters when she thought no one was watching. But someone was watching. Augusto wasn't sleeping well. He stayed at the bedroom window, looking out at the dark courtyard. And sometimes he saw the trembling light of a candle far away, and he knew it was her teaching. In secret, what society said was not for her to teach. One night, he went down. He got close enough to hear. Amelia held a twig and drew letters, in the packed earth, while 3 adult women repeated the sounds in the lowest possible voices. There was something in it that broke and mended the heart at the same time. The courage of those women learning what had been denied them in a moment stolen from the night. Augusto returned to the house without making a sound. The next morning, he placed 3 notebooks and a pencil on the kitchen table, without explanation. Donna Lourdes looked at him with a face of astonishment. He simply sighed for whoever needs them, and left. It was the first time Amelia truly looked at him, not with the usual lowered gaze, with her whole gaze, that deep, dark look that held an intelligence the world tried to erase. And Augusto, for the first time in 7 years, felt that he was alive. The love between Augusto and Emilia did not happen with kisses and promises. It happened in shared silences, in glances that lasted a second longer, in conversations that began with the weather and ended with things neither of them knew they carried. It was Augusto who took the first step. Not the step of a man who wants to possess, but of a man who wants to know. One afternoon, when the farm was quieter, he went to the vegetable garden where Emilia was working and, without ceremony, began pulling weeds beside her. She stood still, not knowing what to do with that. "You don't need to do this, sir," she said in her usual low voice. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." The silence that followed was different. It was a silence between equals, something far too rare in that world. They began to talk, slowly, cautiously, like someone learning to walk again after a fall. Augusto spoke of the farm, of exhaustion, of the loneliness that lived inside him. Emilia, strangely, courageously, began to speak too, of the longing for her mother, dead 2 years earlier, of the anger she swallowed every day to survive, of the dreams she had at night and had to bury in the morning. "You have more courage than any man I know," Augusto said one day, without thinking. She took a while to answer. "It's not courage, sir. It's necessity." He thought about that phrase for weeks. The problem is that true love cannot stay hidden forever. Colonel Brando, the neighboring farmer and the most influential man in the region, was the first to notice. He came to visit Augusto on a Saturday afternoon, as was customary among the big landowners. They sat on the veranda, drank coffee, and talked about the harvest. Then Colonel Brandao saw. He saw Augusto call Amelia, not with an order, but by name. He saw the way he leaned his body slightly when she spoke. He saw the extra second in their glances. Brandao narrowed his eyes. "Augusto," he said, in the voice of a man used to being obeyed, "be careful with what you're doing." "I'm not doing anything, Brandao." "That's what it looks like." He drank his coffee slowly. There are things society does not forgive, not because it's a crime, but because it disturbs the order of things. And when the order is disturbed, everyone loses. Augusto did not reply. But that night he did not sleep. The news spread the way news spread in that time. From veranda to veranda, from mass to mass, from glance to judgmental glance. Farmer Augusto has lost his mind. They say he treats that slave as if she were a person. I've seen everything, but this, at Sunday Mass, the priest, the same one who called Augusto a man of good character, gave a sermon about the natural order of things and the dangers of confusing mercy with madness. Everyone understood who the message was for. Augusto sat in the front row, as always. He heard everything. He didn't leave in the middle. He didn't answer. But when the priest finished, Augusto stood up, bowed his head, and left in silence with a dignity that bothered more than any response. The persecution of Emilia began soon after. The other slave women, afraid of being punished by association, distanced themselves from her. The farm workers stopped talking to her. The children, who used to run to her, were told by their mothers to stay away. Amelia was left alone in the middle of a world she already knew too well. One afternoon, 2 men sent by Colonel Brandao appeared at the farm. They said they were interested in buying some workers. In truth, they had come to show that they could. Augusto received them at the entrance of the farm, hat in hand and voice firm. This farm is not for sale, nor any of its workers. The men smiled sideways and left. But the message had been delivered. That night, Augusto found Emilia sitting alone by the edge of the well, looking at the dark water. He sat beside her without speaking. The two of them remained in silence for a long time. "You should send me away," she said finally. "It would be easier for you." "Easier is not the same as right," he replied. "I'm afraid," she confessed, in a voice so small it seemed the night had swallowed it. Augusto took a while to answer. When he spoke, it was with a voice that did not tremble. "I'm afraid to, but I'm no longer more afraid of loving than of not loving. I learned too late that silence is not peace. It is only silence." Emilia closed her eyes. A tear fell. Just one, but it was honest. The worst came on a Thursday morning. Tonino, the farm boy, came running, out of breath, shouting that they had set fire to the vegetable garden where Emilia worked. It was not an accident. It was a warning. Augusto saw the flames and felt something turn inside him. It wasn't anger. It was a decision. Candido brought water. Donna Lourdes cried while helping to put it out. Emilia stood still, looking at the ashes of the garden she had planted herself, leaf by leaf, with her own hands. Augusto approached her. "Emilia," he said, loudly enough for those nearby to hear, "do you want to leave this farm?" She looked at him. "No," she answered, with a firmness that came from deep in the earth. "Then stay." He turned to the workers around them. "And anyone who touches her will have to go through me first." No one said anything, but everyone understood that something had changed in that man, and there was no turning back. After the fire, the farm fell into a heavy silence. Colonel Brandau called a meeting with the other farmers in the region. They talked about isolating Augusto, stopping business with him, and pressuring him to return to his place. It was the way that society punished those who dared to step out of line. Augusto learned of everything. Candido, the old man who spoke more to oxen than to people, surprised everyone by coming to Augusto in the early morning and telling him every detail of the meeting. With a hoarse voice and eyes full of loyalty, "I was a slave my whole life, su Augusto," said the old man. "But I was never a traitor. You treated Emilia like a person. That is worth more than anything they have." Augusto placed his hand on the old man's shoulder and said nothing. He didn't need to. It was on a Sunday morning that everything came to a head. Colonel Brandau appeared at the farm with 6 men on horseback, like someone coming to collect a debt. He said there was an informal agreement among the farmers and that Augusto was breaking the order. He said Emilia should be redistributed to avoid greater scandals. Augusto listened to everything from the top of the veranda, hands resting on the wooden railing. The farm workers stopped what they were doing. Candido dropped the ox's rope. Donna Lourdes came out of the kitchen still with flour on her hands. Tonino, the boy, climbed a tree branch to see better. Emilia stood beside the door of the big house, head lowered, as she had always learned to do. Brando finished his speech and waited for the answer. Augusto descended the veranda steps. Slowly, with a calm that frightened more than shouting, he stopped in the center of the courtyard, where everyone could see, and spoke not just to Brandau, but to all of them. "You came to tell me that I am breaking an order. I agree. I am breaking an order that I myself helped build without thinking. An order that says some people are born to serve and others to command. An order that decides the value of a human being by the color of their skin and not by the size of their heart. I lived more than 50 years inside that order, and I will be honest. I was a coward for a long time. I pretended not to see what I saw. I pretended it was normal, that it was natural, that it was right. But there are things time does to a man. One of them is to remove the blindfold. And when the blindfold falls, you either close your eyes again or decide you will never close them again. I chose not to close them. This woman Emilia is not my property. She is not anyone's property. She is more intelligent than any man in this courtyard, including me. She has more courage than all of us together, and the way she loves, serves, endures, and still finds strength to teach. That is something I have no words to name, but which I know is sacred. I am not here to discuss with you whether she deserves respect, because respect is not something one deserves. It is something one owes to every human being, without exception. And as for love, yes, I love this woman. Primera sa, yet here in front of all of you, with God as my witness and this farm's land as my altar, without shame, without asking permission. Because true love does not ask society's leave. It simply exists. And whoever has the courage to look at it without prejudice will see that it is cleaner than any judgment you brought here today. So you may leave. You may stop buying my harvest. You may remove me from invitations. You may say whatever you want on your verandas. But as long as I am alive and this land is mine, Amelia is free. And I am the man who chose to love without apologizing for it. The courtyard fell into total silence. Brandao pulled the reins of his horse. He looked at Augusto for a long moment. A look that held anger, but also, deep down, something that seemed like admiration covered by shame. He turned his horse. He left with the 6 men without saying a word. The silence continued for a few seconds, and then Candido clapped. Just one clap with his old and calloused hands. Don Alerts began to cry and clap at the same time, making flour fly through the air. Tonino on the tree branch shouted, "A hurrah!" so loud that the rooster crowed out of turn. One by one, the farm workers began to clap with the dignity of those who clap not out of politeness, but out of recognition. For seeing, for the first time, a powerful man use his power in a way that made sense. Amelia did not cry at that moment. She stood still. Motionless. Like someone hearing a sentence in another language, needing time to translate it into her chest. Augusto turned to her. He walked slowly. He stopped in front of her. "You don't have to love me," he said softly, so only she could hear. "You owe me nothing. But if one day, in whatever way and in whatever time, you want to build something by my side, I will be here." Amelia looked at him with that whole, deep, dark, alive gaze, and for the first time in her life, she did not lower her eyes. She smiled, a small, trembling, but real smile. The kind that costs a lot, and therefore is worth more. "I always knew you had a big heart," she said. "I just needed to be sure that you knew it too." Epilogue. 6 months later, Colonel Brandao did indeed cut ties with Augusto. Other farmers did too. Selling that year's harvest was harder. The paths became more difficult, and the smiles at mass disappeared. But the Boa Esperanza farm never had as much reputation as during that period, because Augusto signed Amelia's letter of manumission and then, one by one, signed those of all the workers who wanted to leave or stay as free and paid workers. Most stayed. Not out of obligation, but because they found on that land something rare. A place where they were seen. Candido said, in his philosophy of someone who spoke more to oxen, "Good land is not the one that gives the biggest harvest. It is the one that doesn't need chains to make people work." Donna Lourdes made an enormous cake for no declared reason. She only said that food needs joy to have flavor, and for the first time everyone understood what she meant. Tonino stopped running away from tasks. Not completely, but he stopped a little. For him, that was a miracle. And Augusto and Amelia, they built slowly, with respect, with conversation, with the stumbles of 2 adults, learning that love is not a state, it is a choice made every day. One late afternoon, sitting on the veranda, looking out at the immense green of the farm, Amelia said, "You lost a lot because of me." Augusto shook his head. "No. I found everything I needed because you existed. Losing what has no value is not loss, it is cleansing." The sun went down slowly, as it always did over the fields of Boa Esperanza. And for the first time in many years, Augusto Ferreira watch the sunset without feeling alone. Prejudice is never about who it points to. It is always about who carries it. How many Augustos exist in the world who love from afar, remain silent out of fear, obey orders they never believed in, but continue because it is easier to follow than to question? How many Amelias exist who carry a greatness that the world insists on ignoring and who, even so, every night light a small candle and teach, resist, dream? Society will always have an opinion about your love, about your choices, about who you smile at and to whom you open the door of your heart. It always will, and it will always think that its opinion is worth more than your own life. But there is a moment, and that moment is different for each person. When you stop, look at what is in the bottom of your chest, and ask, what do I choose? What others expect of me, or who I truly am? Augusto chose late, but he chose, and that choice cost him verandas, business, and invitations, but it brought back what he didn't know he had lost. Himself. Amelia did not ask to be loved. She asked to be seen, and to be truly seen by another human being is perhaps the greatest act of love that exists in this world. The courage to love without asking permission is not weakness. It is the most revolutionary act a human being can practice. And let this question remain for you who heard this story. Is there someone in your life whom you truly see? Is there someone you should see and still haven't? And is there, inside you, a love you still haven't had the courage to declare? Don't wait for the fire to discover what is worth it. If this story touched your heart, right here in the channel, comments a word that sums up what you felt. It can be just one word. It can be a whole paragraph. It can be just a period from someone left speechless. But write, because stories only live when they are shared. If you believe someone needs to hear this story today, share it. You may not know it, but someone on the other side is needing exactly this. To know that loving with courage has always been worth it. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell, and until the next story that will also arrive with everything life has that is most real. Pain, joy, courage, and love. There is no forbidden love. There is only love that frightens those who lack the courage to feel the same.